What's good, everybody? Welcome to Breaking Bet as we break down the Week 2 college baseball slate. Week 1 was fantastic. I know some of the chaos that this sport is known for made me want to rip hair out of my head, but a lot of it did go our way, and it's so great to have the sport back, so we cannot complain at all. As always, I got my guy John Bollman with me for this Friday night breakdown. What's up, John? How we doing?
I'm good, man. Technical difficulties still going at the beginning of the season, but hopefully after these first couple streams will finally be good.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think this is the time that we got to get this kind of stuff worked out. So, further on down the line as the season progresses, we're ready to roll without any hiccups. How did Week 1 treat you?
Day 1 was pretty miserable. I think I was -4 units, but other than that, it's been pretty good. Had a massive Tuesday where I was up 5 units. One yesterday on Tulane. Hopefully UCF finishes this game now, so we're doing well so far, other than that first day.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult when it's the first day, a lot of new faces with the big turnover from last summer, guys making new guys in new roles are getting a bigger opportunity. So sometimes it's hard to pinpoint, but you turned it around. You had a very big midweek. I saw you smacked who was it? UNC Greensboro against Wake Forest the other day for plus 250. That was a monster hit. And midweek is something that I've typically shied away from because if there's one thing more chaotic than college baseball, it's midweek college baseball. But at the same time, the midweeks is really where you can take advantage of a handful of these big time underdogs against some of these top 25 ranked teams, because a lot of these top teams are, I don't want to say punting in the midweek, but they're throwing their fourth, sometimes fifth arm. They're not definitely using their high leverage bullpen arms. So, there's opportunities there for you in the midweek. And, maybe I'll start dabbling a little bit more as the season progresses, selectively pick and choose my spots. But we got Week 2 on deck. And I will say the Friday night slate is probably the worst out of the whole weekend. Typically, early in the season, as we saw last week, you get a lot of these tournaments. We're back in Arlington. We got several other tournaments this weekend, and just the way it fell for Friday, the slate's not fantastic. There's not a ton of great looks, but I think we found some opportunities to give out some winners for this Friday night.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are definitely a couple games that I'm really looking at. But then a lot of, really weird matchups that, we haven't seen in the past. And, it's very hard to evaluate these teams this early in the season as well. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. As we did last week, before we get into the slate, let's start the show with the biggest underdog, most likely to win outright. And when I say underdog, I'm talking about a plus 200 dog or bigger. Who you got?
So, and I apologize if you guys catch me looking over here. I've got my notes on a different computer, but I've got two that I'm looking at. I think I'm going to end up playing both, but I'm not totally sure yet. The first one's Ohio State on the money line, plus 230 against NC State. It's notoriously bad midweek. We saw their implosion against, I believe it was Liberty. And last year they were terrible midweek too. They lost a bunch of games. They're obviously much better over the weekend, but Ohio State played an Arizona State on the road very close. In all those games, they just got some semblance of pitching, they would have at least won a couple games. They could have very easily won that series. So if they can figure out the pitching, I like Ohio State plus 230. And then the other one I'm looking at is Michigan on the money line plus 200. Is that what you're going at?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was what I was looking at.
Can talk about
TCU Michigan is part of this Arlington series. I think it's not the Shriners Classic this week. It's Kabata, I want to say. So this is the series that has a handful of teams like Arkansas, Kansas State, Michigan, TCU's in there, and I do apologize. Two other ones are escaping me at the moment, but
Arkansas and K-State. Are those the other two?
who is it?
Is it Arkansas and Kansas State? Maybe that's another tournament.
Yeah, but there's two more. I think there's 6 total.
Oh, okay. Then,
yeah. So in any case, I was looking at this Michigan team. Listen, I know our boy Noah Beanick is a big Michigan guy, but yeah, you know what? I think it might be actually those 4 teams, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not 6, but Michigan, man, let's give it up for the Wolverines. They went into Ponce, Puerto Rico, and they swept the board. They beat Virginia outright on opening day. That was a play that cost me some money. But I mean, let's give it up, man. Their hitting showed up. Their pitching was pretty solid. They held a great UVA lineup to just 4 runs. And let's give credit where it's due. Michigan did really well. Mitch Voigt is the centerpiece of this offense. The biggest question mark was their pitching. Dylan Vague was pretty good overall. I don't know if they're going to go back to him on Friday night. Even though we just got lined out, unfortunately, we don't have a ton of pitching matchups availed just yet. A small handful have come out, but this is kind of the difficult part of handicapping the sport. We are in the dark, so we're kind of using last week's rotations to give us the best guess on who's going for Friday night. But Dylan Vague was pretty solid overall. Michigan offense did really well. And even though TCU swept San Diego, I don't know if TCU is a team that I think is a slam dunk as a big favorite. I know it was a good series win, but they had a lot of battles over the weekend. Like they had a hard fought series, kind of the same way Ohio State did with ASU. Yeah, Ohio State got swept, but there was a couple really close games in the series that kind of could have went either way. So I would say Michigan is a team, especially now with no Ben Abel on Friday nights, that I would think if there's a big underdog, it would be Michigan that wins outright on Friday.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, obviously the 2 rivals in Ohio State and Michigan, I think those are the best looks for those heavy underdogs.
Yep. All right. Let's get into the game breakdowns. As I said before, the slate on Friday is a little light. It's a lot of those top 25 teams with the layup matchups. So we're not going to tell you to take a team like Oklahoma, who's basically a $3 favorite straight up. But I think the Sooners are a very good parlay piece here on this Friday. Should be Kyson Witherspoon going. Kyson Witherspoon's approaching top 5 pitcher out of the college slate or the college class to be selected in this summer's draft. Heater was hitting the high 90s. This kid has big-time strikeout stuff. He is a very good pitcher. And Oklahoma under Skip Johnson is one of those top schools where you want to be a pitcher, you go be a Sooner because he's going to polish you up and really improve your repertoire.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Oklahoma is going to be one of my biggest parlay pieces as well. There are definitely a couple other looks, but I believe Minnesota lost 2 of 3 to Houston, and Houston's not a good team. And Oklahoma has that 1-2 punch in their starters. So I like Oklahoma as well.
Yeah, I mean, the transition to the SEC for Oklahoma, I felt like could have been tough. But to tell you the truth, when you have pitching like this with the Witherspoon brothers and Cam Johnson, who was a big-time LSU transfer, kid is a behemoth left-hander, that is a formula that can win you a lot of matchups, even in an SEC. because this year, I think you would agree, the pitching overall from college perspective in terms of top arms is down from the past couple of years, where we could probably point out a handful of stud starters in the SEC. It's probably down a little bit this year, and Oklahoma definitely has the edge on a lot of Friday nights with Kyson Witherspoon. The next game up here is basically a pick'em. It's UC Irvine at Texas Tech. Texas Tech got swept by UNC. Their offense was just dotted. Only 6 runs allowed by this Tar Heel pitching staff. UC Irvine had a solid weekend. Their offense looked good overall. They put up 13 runs against Mason McConaughey in Nebraska last Friday night. They got to Vanderbilt's bullpen, made it a really competitive game. They scored 6 runs in that 5th inning. Danny Suarez was okay, 3 innings, 2 runs. There's a lot of pitching on this UC Irvine staff, though, and their offense is timely. I'm not sure if Anthony Martinez, who was out last week, that's their big bat. That's a Golden Spikes preseason watch candidate. I don't know if he's back yet, but Texas Tech's going to go with Mac Hoyer, who pitched on Saturday, and he's going to throw on Friday. Hoyer was okay against UNC at best. I mean, it's a little bit different class of team, but I think even on the road, something that I'm going to be watching very thoroughly, because I picked this up probably, I would say, middle of conference play last year, is taking the home teams on Friday nights. But I think I'm going to go with Irvine as a small favorite down in Lubbock.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we realized last year that even these bad teams at home, they're totally different. Taking those favorites on the road is, you've got to really trust those teams, and you've got to, really be into those teams to take that juice, because it seems like the home teams are always winning. Irvine obviously had a great weekend. They played USC midweek. For whatever reason, they always did USC. They can never figure out USC. They lost both games from last year, and they had a much better team last year. I always say beware of the winless team, though, because teams aren't going to go 0-55 or however many games they're going to play, right? So Texas Tech back at home. I think this line's pretty dead on, to be honest, and I'm probably just going to stay game in total, just because I think Irvine's the better team, but like I mentioned, beware of the winless team, and I could see Texas Tech suddenly showing up.
Yeah, Texas Tech is no gimme. I mean, I pointed this out last week when we were covering the UNC series. Their offense has got some guys, TJ Pompey, Damian Bravo, even though they lose Gavin Cash. I mean, it is an offense that can score. They just happen to go up against a really good UNC staff. This one's more of Irvine's fundamentally overall the better team. They have a lot of high leverage arms that I do like. Their offense is timely. I don't think it's an offense that would blow a lot of these top offenses out of the water, but it's good enough. Listen, I completely agree. The winless team factor is big, especially when you have a Power 5 conference squad, but I think just the overall better team being Irvine. I think the pitching matchup could end up being, honestly, a coin flip, a draw maybe. And bullpen-wise, I give the edge to Irvine. So that's the reasoning for my play. I think Irvine is where I'm going here. The next one is Southern Miss against Louisiana Tech. John, Southern Miss had a good opening weekend, right? They're a big favorite here. I don't know if I'm advising you to give out a -188 or take a -188 favorite straight. Southern Miss has usually got a pretty good home field advantage out in Pete Taylor Park. They're 5-0 to start the year. JB Middleton was fantastic against Lehigh on last Friday night. 6 shutout innings, 4 Ks, 1 walk, 3 hits. I think Southern Miss is a team that I would explore into a parlay piece. Louisiana Tech's always a scrappy bunch, but, a team that loses Ethan Bates, star closer and two-way player, their starting rotation's nothing that I'm really concerned about. I like Southern Miss here as part of a parlay piece, but I can't give out this mid-major as a straight play at this price.
Yeah, so these teams always play each other close. I think they've played 3 straight years now, and I think one of the teams has won 2 of the, there hasn't been a sweep in 3 straight years. Last year, I don't know if you guys remember, but Louisiana Tech, Southern Miss played great games back and forth. The first 2 games, Southern Miss took. The third game, Louisiana Tech took, I think it was 18-11. They ended up, they were up something crazy, like 11-3, ended up giving up the lead and tying it, but then pulling away late. So I'm kind of with you. I think Southern Miss will probably win, but at this value, I've got to go Louisiana Tech. Plus 145 is pretty juicy to play them against, with these 2 teams that are very good teams and always play each other close. So I think I'm going to go Louisiana Tech at plus money, and, hopefully they would win game 1 or something. Then we can go back to Southern Miss game 2 and game 3. But I think Louisiana Tech's going to win at least one of these games, maybe win the series.
Yeah, definitely possible. I mean, maybe Louisiana Tech worth a run line play when the run lines and totals do come out. We're trying to give you the best information and the best plays early here on this Thursday night so you can have time to adjust and have time to put them in before Friday. There's a lot of early start times on Friday because of the weather. A lot of these games got moved up to 2 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. But the downside is the totals don't come out until a little bit later. This is, I would say, the best matchup of Friday's slate in the Round Rock, Texas Carbach Classic. Virginia, Oregon State. The one issue I'm having with this is we don't know who UVA is going with. Their Friday night guy, Evan Blanco, had an injury and did not pitch last week, but they said they expected him to be ready for this weekend. Assuming that's the case, we would think he slots back in for the Friday game. But if he does, we don't know what his pitch count looks like. Most pitchers didn't go past 75 last week, being their first start. Even if that's the case, I don't like what I saw from UVA's offense. And listen, I think they're going to be fine. UVA is one of my big 3 tier 1 teams that I took this year. I think their offense is gonna groove sooner than later. This Oregon State matchup, though, is not only very intriguing, but it's a big litmus test because Oregon State every year is one of the better teams in college baseball, and a lot of people believe that this is an Omaha caliber team. I wouldn't argue that. I think it's definitely possible. They have a great lineup. They have a lot of high-octane arms. And their Friday night guy last week was Nelson Keljo. Against Xavier, 4 shutout innings, 1 hit, 5 Ks. He did walk 5 batters. Lefty with a lot of stuff. Oregon State, Penn was decent this week. Their offense was awesome. They're hotter right now. This is neutral territory. And I'll say this. If UVA is going back to Jay Woolfolk, this is Oregon State all day. Give me the Beavers minus 125.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm all over Oregon State here.
Thank you, Kyle. Kyle, this is confirmed. I was trying to find information, but if this is confirmed, then this has got to be Oregon State all the way.
Yeah, and Woolfolk is one of those guys. He's got insane stuff. He just, for whatever reason, gets hit. And we saw that last year. Towards the end of the year, he kind of was figuring it out in the postseason as well. But he doesn't, like I said, he gives up runs, and that he's not necessarily the top guy that you'd want. And Oregon State, you mentioned that Virginia's bats are cold to start the season. Oregon State, I believe, if any of you guys saw that stat, it was like 8 or 9 players hit 95 or higher over the weekend for Oregon State. So Oregon State's got some fireballers. It's really hard to break out of a slump when you're facing all guys that throw over 95. So I've got to go Oregon State here. They absolutely dominated start this season, and Virginia's got off to a really slow start.
Yeah, Kyle, thank you so much. I did check UVA's site and Oregon State's site before we kicked off here, but I couldn't find it. But I did see a tweet. It says Jay Woolfolk will go tomorrow against Oregon State. Saturday is Bryson Moore. Sunday is Thomas Valanciunas against Oklahoma. So it doesn't look like Evan Blanco is back in the rotation this weekend. I don't know, injury-wise what's going on there. I don't know when he's going to come back. Maybe they're just being precautionary because they have championship aspirations this week. But this is a plus matchup for us with Oregon State. Their offense went absolutely nuclear in their surprise Arizona College Baseball Classic. They scored 8 against Xavier, 16 against UNLV, 6 against Indiana, and 18 against Xavier on Monday. And obviously, those teams aren't UVA, but the pitching matchup of Jay Woolfolk's off or he gets into pitch count trouble early, Oregon State should score. And on a side note, Oregon State plays Oklahoma Saturday afternoon. That's going to be a great game. It should be Dax Whitney, the insane freshman who was up to 98 this weekend, against Malachi Witherspoon. So that'll be a good one. Circle that for your calendars on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, would be a good underlook in Globe Life. Massive.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go out west here. Stanford minus 195 against Washington. Washington surprised a lot of people in their opener against Kansas State last week. And Max Banks, 6 shutout innings. Matt Scott, he's a guy that is projected as a potential first rounder this year. Very live arm. This is a guy who, when he's on, he can be one of the better pitchers in college baseball. And behind him is a Stanford lineup that absolutely raked against Cal State Fullerton this past weekend. Scott, 5 1/3, 4 hits, 1 earned, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks against Cal State Fullerton. Very solid. This Washington team, I expected to be towards the bottom in their conference, coming over from the Pac-12. I don't really envision Washington upsetting Stanford here in this one, potentially in another game, because the rest of their pitching has been definitely up and down, especially with the bullpen. But I think Stanford here is a good play. Would you lay this 195 straight?
I think so. I wrote it down as a straight. Maybe look at parlay piece in like a Clemson minus 500 at home, their home opener, I believe it is. Or like an Oklahoma, like we mentioned earlier. But I think I like it straight up. Stanford is usually a team I stay away from. The past couple, they always seem to lose those games that you think they're going to win. Last year, they had a miserable start to the season. I'm just a big Stanford hater as well. So that's been pretty well documented, but I feel like this team is different. Sasaki in the middle of that lineup, I mean, he's one of the best players in college baseball already. And then, like you said, Stanford has that pitching at the top of their rotation. So, and they look great against Fullerton. Fullerton only won like 15, 20 games last year, but they still have some solid talent. So I think I would definitely lay the minus 195 on Stanford there.
I need a little bit more time to decide if I want to lay this price because, as you said, like Stanford's got a lot of talent, but they have this really, really bad knack of just kind of pissing these games away, big leads. Their pitching just completely loses the strike zone. I do think it's a parlay piece, but straight up, I need a little bit more time. I don't think I would take it past once it tips over into the 200s. I don't think I would take it. It's Stanford's too unreliable as a program for me to take it in this day and age. Let's go to an interesting matchup down in Jacksonville. Coastal Carolina against Alabama. Cullen McKay, the Virginia transfer through the Friday night game, the opener for Coastal last weekend. He was solid. He only threw a couple innings, though. a little bit more as an opener. Against Alabama, Zane Adams, who wasn't that great. 4 innings, 3 earned runs. I got to say, especially because it's on a neutral site, John, I think I'm leaning Coastal. I like Coastal Carolina. I know they can hit. Their pitching seemed to be pretty solid this weekend. That they faced some decent competition. I know Alabama is regarded as one of probably the back half of the SEC teams. They do have some talent. Justin LeBron's a star. He's going to be a very high draft pick next year. But I think on a neutral site here, Coastal getting plus money with an offense that we know puts up runs. I think I'm going to go Coastal Carolina here at plus money.
Yeah, I think I would be on the opposite side here. One of the few. I don't love the price, minus 160. I would have expected minus 150 or lower. I think there's definitely some SEC bias in there. But Coastal is also a totally different team on the road. I guess technically this isn't a road game. It's a neutral game, but they're a different team away from home, I should say. Alabama's always got some solid talent. They were caught up in that gambling scandal. What was that, 2 years ago now? Lost coach out of it in the middle of season 2 years ago. So, they're in a bit of a rebuilding year. New coach, usually around the 3rd year is when, you start to see these teams either prove it or show that, they're going to get there. Coastal's always a solid team. They're always going to hit. It's really if they're going to get the pitching. And a lot of times it's a big if. So I think I'd lean Alabama here, but I don't love the price.
Yeah, that's the other thing. If we took away the prices, Alabama's got some talent, but I don't think it's anything that's overwhelming. I think, the SEC tax is big. We saw it with Mizzou and Penn State last weekend. We've seen it a lot with a team like Mizzou, who's been a favorite in a couple games, and they shouldn't be. Honestly, if this was soccer, they'd be relegated to the shadow realm. I think Alabama's not anywhere near as bad as Mizzou. They're a team that is capable. They're a team that, like I said, they have some talent. But you're paying this SEC tax. You're paying minus 160. Now, Zane Adams is a good pitcher, and he's expected to take a big jump this year. But early in the season, getting plus money on an offense that does score and a pitching staff that at least looked good this past weekend, I think is worth the plus money. Laying 160 on Alabama is a tall task for me. Let's go to another coin flip game here. Nebraska with Mason McConaughey at ULL, Louisiana Lafayette, those Raging Cajuns. Chase Morgan. Chase Morgan is one of the best, if not the best, mid-major pitcher that we have in today's game. This is going to be a very good pitcher's duel. Nebraska is a team I picked to win the Big Ten preseason. I can see already after the opening weekend, it's going to be a big love-hate relationship. They're going to be great one game, and they're going to be awful the next. Their loss against Grand Canyon on Monday was, I want to say concerning, but that's really come on, you're going against Grand Canyon in their 4th arm on Monday. You only score 1 run. You leave a million base runners stranded. This offense, in my opinion, is pretty solid. The fact is you're not going to leave as many base runners as they did stranded. You're going to get that big hit. You're not going to be stymied to 1 run. Mason McConaughey looking for a bounce-back start after a subpar outing against UC Irvine last Friday night for the Desert Invitational. Chase Morgan, I think, is going to be pretty good. I think this is going to be a tight game through 5 innings. I think it's going to be 1 in the late innings here. So it's really whichever bullpen blinks first. But in a coin flip here, I think Nebraska is where I would go. But I'm waiting for total team totals and total runs to be given out. I might look into a first 5, potentially an under here as well.
Yeah. So this is one of those games, it's probably a coin flip. ULL somehow lost 2 of 3. Was it San Jose State who they lost to? Yeah. Which you would not expect for ULL at home. Usually they're very good at home. They've got a great home field advantage. But yeah, like you said, Nebraska is just so Jekyll and Hyde. Either they're going to play like they should, they're going to be great, or they're going to no show. And, I feel like they're going to be like that for this whole season. ULL usually gets off to slow starts like they did last year. And then I believe it was Tulane played, and it was in 2-out 9th inning. I want to say 2-run home run to walk off Tulane. And that kind of jump-started their season. But I think I would go with ULL. We talked about the home teams, right? And yeah. I think I would just stick with these home teams. So I would lean ULL at home here. But like you mentioned as well, I would definitely look at an under too. Nebraska always has solid pitching, especially at the past couple of years they've had solid pitching, especially at the top of their rotation, top of their bullpen. ULL, like you mentioned, great starter, and they usually have some good relievers too. So, and both teams' bats can go quiet. So I've been deciding, I'm still going to be deciding if I want to go ULL at home or an under. But I like both of those.
Yeah, listen, I mean, this is kind of this is the part of the season where I start experimenting with different things. And, obviously the home team on Friday night has been typically a conference play thing. And early in the season, teams are trying to get their legs under them. ULL, as you mentioned, is a team that typically starts slow. I don't know, man. Nebraska off a bad loss on Monday, somewhat of a shortish turnaround. I don't think they're going to put up two bad offensive games in a row, even against Chase Morgan. Like maybe they get shut down first time through the order, or maybe Morgan goes 5 innings, 1 run again. But bullpen wise, I feel like they should be able to get to them. And listen, if I'm wrong and the home teams do really well this weekend, so be it. But this is the time of the year where you can make those mistakes, because then, as a good bettor does over the course of the season, you make adjustments throughout the year and make mental notes. Okay, well, next Friday night, maybe I'll take 90% home teams depending on the matchup and depending on the pitchers.
Yeah, this early in the season, you win or you learn.
Yeah, you win or you learn. It's a good one. Oral Roberts at Arizona State. How about my Sun Devils? The team that I gave out as my preseason Big 12 winner at 8-1. I loved their offense coming in, 4th year for Willie Bloomquist. But I really love their Friday night guy, Ben Jacobs. And I know Ben Jacobs got hit a little bit against Ohio State, who, by the way, the offense is the strength of that team. Justin Hare was a great coach for Campbell. He had a really good offense when he was there. Ohio State got to Ben Jacobs. The slider wasn't crisp. It was hanging. The fastball was all over the place. And when he located it down the middle of the plate. So I'm expecting a better start for Ben Jacobs here. And Oral Roberts I don't think they have the same magic they did a couple years ago when they made that Omaha run, at least not right now. Obviously, I'm not going to tell anybody to lay 238 with Arizona State, even at home, and this offense. But I think we can probably look into Arizona State as another parlay piece. We're putting in that mix with one of the better Friday night starters in Ben Jacobs. And maybe when the lines drop, we'll look into some team totals with Arizona State. This is an offense, like last week was no fluke. This is a lineup that, when it's all said and done, could end up being top 10 in the country. I mean, they have a lot of dogs. Brandon Compton had an unbelievable week. He batted .468, 2 home runs. He had 9 RBIs. This is a guy I gave out as an additional Golden Spikes play throughout the weekend. They're 75-1 on Caesars, even though I can only put $13 on it, like joy. But there's a lot of bats here, and I expect Arizona State to score a lot of runs this weekend. Facing Oral Roberts, I think they're going to be able to do that, give Ben Jacobs a lot of support.
Yeah, this team can hit. I mean, even for a long time, they've been built around their hitting in that dry air, dry heat in Arizona. We saw it against Ohio State. I mean, they don't have the best pitching staff, Ohio State, but at the same time, Ohio State was putting up some runs, and Arizona State just kept coming back. And every time it seemed like Ohio State went up, Arizona State would just come back. And that's the sign of a good team. They go down and they don't think they're out of it. And Oral Roberts is a solid program too, a solid team. But I think Arizona State's just going to be too much for them. I really like them in a parlay. I don't mind it with Oklahoma, like we mentioned. Like I mentioned, I think Arkansas against K-State, Kansas State's a good parlay piece as well, with Kansas State's really slow starts this season. Those would be some options with Arizona State to parlay, but I definitely like Arizona State on a money line in a parlay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like I said, I think they're going to be a really good team this year. If the rest of their pitching staff and their bullpen, get ironed out, and again, like if they're slightly above average, even average, this team can do really well this season. They really can. They're going to be one of those dark horse surprises that around early May, late April, we're looking up and saying, hey, wow, Arizona State's a really good team. They're pushing Oklahoma State for the Big 12 title. I believe this can be a 45-win team. I really do. I'm a big believer in the Sun Devils this year. The last game that I have officially highlighted is Arkansas K-State. Globe Life Fields, Arlington. This is Gabe Gackle territory, pulling the Hagen Smith, coming out of the bullpen from the season before to become the Friday night guy. Great opening start against Wazoo last weekend. 5 shutout innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. The stuff looks as electric as ever. Gabe Gackle is he's a horse. I mean, the kid's an absolute stud. Going against Kansas State, who, if you pay attention to my Twitter, you would have seen after they got shut down by Washington, K-State was the first team on the no-bet list for 2025. I don't think K-State's going to be that good this year. I don't think their pitching is going to be that great. I don't think their offense is going to be anything special. You lose Kalen Culpepper. That's a big one. And this is a revenge spot for Arkansas. K-State went into their own region, and they knocked out Arkansas and Hagen Smith, and they put a beating on them. I think this is a spot where Arkansas gets revenge. Again, not laying 250 even with this pitcher, but this is a parlay piece. I think Arkansas is going to be one of the main parlay pieces for Friday behind Gabe Gackle.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We saw Kansas State was the first game of the season on Friday. I think it started at either 11 or 12, and so many people bet on it. It was like minus 170. It shot up to like minus 220, something like that. And, they laid an egg. And then we kind of saw throughout the weekend that they're not pitching well right now. They're not hitting yet. And Arkansas, the calm with them is always, are they going to hit? Are they going to hit? They've got probably the best pitching staff in the nation. They're so deep. But it's always if they're going to hit, and I believe the game Globe Life Field. And there's the revenge spot, like you mentioned. So I really like Arkansas on a parlay piece. If you want to just go with a 2-way parlay, an Arizona State, Arkansas parlay would be a pretty good option.
Yeah, definitely. Like, if you want to just kind of build up the bankroll for the weekend, it's not a bad idea to take some of these big favorites, even if it's a couple of them, even if you're putting together, like you said, an Arkansas and an Arizona State, 2 mid minus 200s together. I mean, that's minus 102. You put $102, you win 100 if they both hit, which I feel like they both should, behind 2 stud pitchers. Then boom, you got $100. Now, looking at the Saturday slate, you got a little bit more wiggle room to take some action and take a little bit more of a risk. Other matchups you're looking at. I'm curious about your opinion on Cincinnati. If you paid attention to last Friday's show, you'll remember I talked about the big underdog winning outright with Cincinnati. Ultimately, I did believe Duke was going to win the series, but I had Cincinnati winning at least 1 game. And I liked them on Friday night against Kyle Johnson. They were plus 220. Even if not on the money line, on the run line, they were getting 2.5. This is a team that is going to be they're going to be a pest in the Big 12 this year. They small balled Duke to death. They executed sacrifice bunts, hit and runs, get guys on, over, in, and they were, an absolute nightmare. They scored 20 runs on Duke on Sunday. And, listen, it's besides the point. I had Duke as a regression team this year, but that's still impressive to go on the road opening weekend against a Power 5 team and a team that's historically done very well and put a beating on them and take the series. Cincinnati's minus 154 at UNLV. Kellen O'Connor started last Friday, only an inning and a third, 2 runs, but the bullpen did really well. They only allowed 3 runs to Duke on that Friday game. They scored 8. Minus 154 seems pretty decent, even on the road at UNLV for the Bearcats here.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, I think Cincinnati's looked great to start the season. I like Cincinnati in that game, but this early in the season and with the home dogs and how they played out last year, I think I'm just going to stay away from those like short mid-tier favorites on the road. Like I think since you would win that game, it's just, I'm going to stay away from those short favorites for now. Couple games looking at Michigan, TCU, you alluded to earlier. I think Michigan's a good look there, especially at plus 200. TCU, they're supposed to be a good team this season. They absolutely ran over San Diego, but at the same time, Michigan's gotten off to a great start too. And we don't totally even with TCU's start, I'm still not totally believing in them. Maybe, that maybe they'll keep proving me wrong and I'll stop fading them. But at plus 200, I think that's a good look. And then one other game I really want to mention is my team, Tulane, on the money line, minus 175 against Marymount. Yeah. So Marymount just played, I believe it was 5 games in a row over the weekend through Monday and Tuesday. Now they have to travel all the way down to Louisiana for a Friday game, and this game just got moved up. So I believe it's either 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. I think it's 3 o'clock local time game. So that feels like a 1 p.m. game for Loyola Marymount after the travel. So I think Tulane's going to be a very good team this year. I think I have them winning the AAC. I think it's a down year for ECU, and there aren't too many other teams in the AAC that you're going to go all in on right now. So I think Tulane is a great look against LMU. Like I said, they had to travel. It's an early game. Luke Flatta doesn't overpower you. He's probably the definition of a crafty lefty. Throws 88, has some, is very great with his command. And Tulane's lineup, they can hit, man. I believe they only have 1 guy right now, who maybe 2 guys who are batting under 300. Obviously, it's a very, very early in the season, but one of those guys, Nick Johnson, he's batting like 1 something, and I believe he's a true freshman. And then the other guy's Jackson Lynn, who can hit a ball out at any time. So they've got some guys, Michael Lombardi at the top of that lineup, Matthias Haas, Gavin Scholes. I think Tulane is going to be a very good team this year. I think minus 175 is perfectly fine with, like I said, everything that's going on for Loyola Marymount.
I was looking at that earlier, and I knew I was going to bring it up, and I knew, it would get your ears perking because you're a big Tulane guy. But, listen, I think that price is right. Minus 175 is fair. I mean, I could definitely see that tomorrow morning we wake up and, they're minus 215. Tulane is definitely a team, especially at home. Long travel for Loyola Marymount. They played a lot of baseball. This is a spot where I do agree with you. I think I might add Tulane to my card. I typically don't bet Tulane a lot, but I'm very selective with this, and I think this is an advantage matchup. And they are a very good team. And, I was looking at the AAC preseason, and I'm like, East Carolina is being minus 200 favorite. Like, this is not the same East Carolina team. I mean, this East Carolina struggled with George Mason this weekend. So new blood. I think Tulane was in like the 6-1 favorite. I'm like, or 6-1 territory. I'm like, what are we doing? What's happening here? Listen, I think I might add Tulane to the card. I think that's a very intriguing matchup here for them. Loyola Marymount, a lot of games they played. This could be a tough turnaround. Like you said, I like the handicap a lot.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, plus 28 jumped on that. I believe it was on Tuesday. So I think that's unbelievable odds. CU's probably going to have a down year this year, and there really isn't anybody else in the AAC who you can say, like, okay, this team's going to be legit. So and this isn't just because I'm a Tulane fan. Like, I'm very high on Tulane this year. Jay Ullman in his 3rd year He's got some older guys. He's got, his younger guys, his top recruits coming in. This is the make or break year.
Yeah. Tulane is typically a team we see make the tournament a decent amount. So, it's one of those mid-major schools that has a lot of juice. And I do agree with you. One game I wanted to talk to you about. I don't really have a play. This is just more of me discussing this. San Diego.
I knew you were going to say that.
Of course you did. San Diego ended up getting swept against TCU, but they didn't play. I wouldn't say they played bad. Pretty much all these games were close. They lost 5-4 in the 10th inning on Friday. They lost 9-2 on Saturday, lost 13-5 on Sunday, and they lost 7-6 on Monday. So they got clean swept 0-4. Tough way to start. But now they're playing the Arizona Wildcats. Their Friday guys, San Diego, Cal Scolari, 5 shutout innings, 9 Ks, 2 walks, 1 hit against TCU's lineup. TCU doesn't have a fantastic lineup, but it's decent. It's solid. Going against Arizona, that got embarrassed. I was disgusted with them on Sunday, by the way. Disgusted. They got swept in the Shriners Classic with, honestly, a lot of good teams. Like, it was a very big litmus test for them. Like, can Arizona overcome losing their entire weekend rotation from last year? Their offense, typically every season, their offense is death by 1,000 cuts. They have a handful of guys that just get on base. They can put the ball in play. They have a stud in Brendan Summerhill, who could potentially be a top 10 pick this year. They have a guy who has a ton of power in Mason White, even though he does strike out. They have a pretty solid 2-hitter in Garen Caulfield, and they have a few other guys. Outside of the Saturday inning where Brendan Summerhill hit a grand slam, I think they scored like 3 runs all weekend outside of that one inning. It was an embarrassment on Sunday, but all weekend really, like, just not good. Their Sunday guy I was impressed with. Smith Bailey, freshman. Stuff looked fantastic. He was mowing hitters down. Arizona looked in really good position to win that game. And he went 4 innings. I personally felt Chip Hale pulled him too soon because he only had like 53 pitches through 4 innings. And I get it was his first start ever. And I get it was opening weekend. But as soon as he pulls him, he brings the bullpen in. The bullpen allows an 8-run inning. Friday night guy, Colin McKinney, was pretty solid. But I don't know if this offense is magically just going to turn it around this weekend. Is San Diego worth a play here on this Friday night at plus 124?
So I was looking at this game as well. San Diego is 0-4, Arizona 1-3. Absolutely terrible starts for both these teams. Neither teams were hitting. So I ended up I think I'm going to go with the under here. When neither team's hitting, it doesn't take crazy pitching to, keep them silent. And like you mentioned, even San Diego's Friday night guy pitched very well. But, it's very hard to hit, especially when you're not hitting. So it doesn't take insane pitching to keep these two teams down. And neither team has been hitting to start the season. Neither team has been playing well to start the season. So I think we're going to get a pretty high total with Arizona. Usually you get high totals with, Arizona State, those types of teams. So I think my favorite play there would be an under.
Where would you take the under until? Like, what's the cutoff line?
I'm thinking it's going to open around 12.5. I'm hoping.
You think that high?
I think so. I'm hoping we'll get 13.5. Probably not. But I think I would take it if it's 11.5 or lower. But hoping for 13.5, 12.5, I'd still take it. 11.5, I'd probably still go. The key thing here is when I look at totals, I look at these tie games, right? So an 11.5 total, 5-5 game, you have a walk-off, you have the 1-run game, it's a 6-5 game. At 12.5, 6-6 tie, you automatically lose. So, obviously it doesn't always work out that way, but when the average of a random college baseball game is usually the average number of runs for a random team in a college baseball game is usually around 5, kind of like in Major League Baseball, it's around 4. Those numbers are very crucial. If you get an 11.5 versus 12.5, or 12.5 versus 13.5, with those ties. So I would definitely take it at 11.5 still. That 6-5 game is a winner, but hoping for 12 or 13.
Yeah, I mean, 11.5 is probably the lowest I would go. I would hope for 12.5. The hard thing about college baseball is it's not like an MLB, man. There could be that one disaster inning. We saw it so many times this weekend where the game's cruising along, a team's cruising along, and then boom, their pitcher loses the strike zone or their pitcher gets pulled early and the bullpen comes in. And, it's not like the pros. Like the pro batters don't walk 3 guys in a row. They don't walk the bases loaded.
Or they get pulled before they.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. The pros, there's very rarely these 5, 6, 7 run innings. There's just these complete disasters. College, there is. That's the one concern. But, if you're playing the odds and you're playing the percentages and the probabilities, it doesn't happen a lot. I mean, if you took all of the college baseball games that's going to be played this year in D1, which is, it's 300 something teams. So, and each team's playing at least they're playing at least, I would say 55, 60 games. Chances are it's probably 1% of those games have an inning that's 5 or more runs. That being said, I think 11.5 is the cutoff point for me. If it's 12.5, I think I would take it. Colin McKinney was good last Friday night against Ole Miss. Cal Scolari was good against TCU. I think chances are I'd probably take it to that point. I want to see when it comes out, and I'm going to add it to the Discord, of course, and if indeed I do like it.
I had one question for you because I don't know much about these teams. What do you think of Michigan State versus Washington State? Michigan State's plus 105. And they're off to, I believe it's a 4-0 start already. I don't know too much about these teams, so I was just wondering what you think.
It's actually funny that you say that. It's a game I'll probably end up staying away from. Wazoo was tough on Arkansas, but we know Arkansas has trouble hitting most of the time. Overall as a team, that's what Arkansas does. But Michigan State, they're a team that can be sneaky on Fridays because they have a really, really talented 6'8" lefty, Joseph Zerwa. 6 innings, 1 run, shutout, 1 walk, 11 strikeouts against Western Michigan. Western Michigan, obviously, slapdick program, but I mean, this kid is a stud, man. I mean, his ERA was a little high last year. He can give up a home run. He gave up 11 home runs last year, but he had 91 strikeouts, only 27 walks, and 84 innings last season. I mean, if I was going to go with a side here, I would go with Michigan State because I'm backing him. Wazoo was impressive last weekend, but game being at Michigan State, probably got the advantage with the pitching matchup. It's not official, but I will go with the Spartans here.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'd lean. I just think the wrong team's favored there, to be honest. And, like I said, I don't know too much about either team, but I would definitely lean Michigan State. Might make that a play.
Yeah, I gotta look into it a little bit more. I mean, I want to see the action's probably going to come in on them, and we're going to see a potential line flip there. Honestly, the slate, like I said, it's pretty light here for this Friday. It was tough to try and extract some value in teams that you would want to bet. I mean, I guess the one more that I wanted to ask you about, Liberty. Liberty had a good weekend against St. John's. They're playing Xavier. Xavier is a team that, they're interesting. They can be a bit pesky, but Liberty's a pretty good ball team, a pretty good ball club, man. Yeah, minus 145 at home. Do you think You think Liberty's is worth an official play?
Yeah, so I was looking at this one too. I wrote it down. Liberty money line minus 145. Liberty's always a solid program. They're really good at home. They had a bit of a down year last year, and Xavier. I'm not too high on Big East teams, to be honest. Like a lot of people are very high on the UConns, the Xaviers of the world, but I've never been too high on those two teams. You know, they have flashes, but they're not very consistent at all. And those teams, they always have to go on these road trips to start the season, these super long road trips, because obviously it's super cold where they play. So I would definitely lean Liberty on the money line there. I was looking at it. I do feel like it's a little expensive, though. I kind of wish it was around minus 125, minus 130. Then I think I would definitely play it. Minus 145 is getting up there, but I would still definitely lean Liberty.
Yeah, I mean, you know, these Big East teams, especially. One thing I was really trying to do this past weekend, was fade these cold weather teams. These cold weather teams haven't really been playing outside. They don't have the same opportunity. And, you know, Liberty, I think, is in Virginia, so it's not like they're playing in South Florida, but, you know, it's a little bit better, and typically they're a better baseball school. So 145 is something that I'm also going to ponder. Nothing that's on the card at the moment, but I will give it a serious consideration, because I do like how their offense showed out last weekend. And just because you play an easy team, I mean, we've seen some of these squads, their offenses didn't show up at all. So the fact is, you're hitting, you start out hot, you got some momentum, you have some confidence, and you carry that over.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Any other teams or any other games that you wanted to talk about?
No, that's pretty much all I've got. We've literally hit on every single game that, you know, I looked at and had written down.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I know we talk about this a lot with parlays. Teams like Vanderbilt, minus 425 favorite against St. Mary's with J.D. Thompson going. Clemson, a minus 500 favorite against VCU, Aiden not going. You know, those are definite parlay pieces for you.
Yeah, 100%. You know, and you can't really do it in MLB with those massive favorites, but college baseball is one of those sports where you can. You know, those massive money line favorites are very profitable usually. And yeah, I definitely like Vandy money line in a parlay, Clemson money line in a parlay. And then we hit on UCLA on the money line parlay is another one against Texas A&M. Corpus Christi, the only thing is it's at Corpus Christi, but UCLA has gotten off to a hot start this season. So, especially those home massive favorites are definitely big parlay pieces for me.
I feel like UCLA is going to lose a game this weekend. I'm waiting on the return of UCLA's glorious baseball program.
I wouldn't be surprised. You know, they've gotten off to a great start. I don't think they're very good overall, but they put up some runs. Their bats are hot right now, and it's not like Corpus Christi is one of those, you know, mid-majors that you expect to be good.
Definitely an interesting selling point. But that'll wrap it up for our show. We appreciate everybody taking the time tonight to listen in. Hopefully you got some good information for Friday. John, appreciate the time, brother. Great stuff as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Always good to talk some college baseball.
Absolutely. I live for this. This is great. And it's nice that we have lines out early enough on Thursday so we can kind of prepare ourselves and take a look at the matchups and do our research. TBD on the show tomorrow. Chances are I will be on with Noah Beanick for the college baseball experience. So keep an eye out on my Twitter at _JohnnyVTV for any updates. Sometimes just the way it works, I do the TCE show and stream it to my Breaking Bet podcast. So that way you're able to watch it and you get some information for the Friday recap and the Saturday preview. But thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Best of luck this weekend, and we will talk to you soon.